We're honored to have as our keynote for the evening, Phil Cobucci, a tireless worker for LGBTQ+ and civil rights for all Tennesseans. Please welcome to the stage, Phil Cobucci.
Thank you, Justin. Before I start this evening, I want to take some time to acknowledge that the land that we are gathering on is the traditional homelands of the Cherokee, Shawnee, and Yuchi people. This land has long been a center for Indigenous people to gather, trade, and maintain kinship ties, which was violently taken under settler colonialism and open warfare. And the region that is now Tennessee still struggles for sovereignty, self-determination, and justice. The genocidal acts of settler colonialism extended to peoples of Africa and their enslaved descendants. And the vestiges of slavery remain present throughout the United States and directly affect the descendants of enslaved peoples, descendants who helped define the rich culture of Africa and other enslaved nations. The genocidal patterns of violence against peoples of African descent and Indigenous people have been replicated to exclude and harm people from many intersecting marginalized identities: religious, disabled, LGBTQI+ identified, BIPOC, and POC writ large in the United States and its territories. Today, we acknowledge that we are living, breathing, laughing, loving, and grieving, and sharing space on unceded territory. May we learn to honor the historical and contemporary presence and power of people and their belief that we must be caretakers of the lands and waters for the livelihood of future generations. I would also be remiss to note that we are still very much a region in mourning, where not just even 3 weeks ago, Evelyn Dykehouse, William Kinney, Haley Scruggs, Cynthia Peak, Mike Hill, and Catherine Kuntz all lost their lives in the government school shooting in Nashville. May we remember their lives and continue to fight for gun reform in our state and to protect our people from violence. Thank you to President McPhee and Dr. Langston and the MTSU Lambda Association and the 2023 MTSU LGBT+ College Conference Advisory Board for the invite to keynote this evening. I am honored to have been invited and to share with you tonight. When I was asked to present the keynote on February 21st, I gleefully accepted, thinking that I would speak on the mission of Inclusion Tennessee, where I serve as the executive director. I would speak on the greater need for intersectional partnerships in our collective work for LGBTQ+ liberation throughout Tennessee. What none of us realized, though, was that in just 3 short weeks, an intersectional movement and revolution for justice, accountability, and freedom would wash like a wave over Tennessee, and a momentum would start to build that I hope will liberate people from the chains of hatred and bitterness that have been spewed from our state legislature over the last decade plus towards Black, brown, queer, trans, young, old, and poor people in our state. These past 3 weeks have changed me, and they have inspired me. And I've realized that we collectively are a revolution. It is important to remember that first and foremost, that our revolution begins with the self. And in our self, we need to take time to fashion revolutionary selves, revolutionary lives, and revolutionary relationships. The revolution of self will help upend the boxes that so many people will try to squeeze us into, and that will help us resist the demands that we must choose an identity, and it will help us free the multiplicities that we contain. To make our hearts too revolutionary for the patriarchy's attempts to attach its chains to you. To make your mind free enough so that fascism cannot shackle your imagination. There is great danger in these times, and yet all is not lost. The future remains unwritten. It is ours to shape, though it will not be easy. Institutional power has been hijacked by corrupt, racist, misogynistic, transphobic, xenophobic, homophobic, queerphobic, and blithely incompetent leaders who are hell-bent on dismantling the very hallmarks of democracy here in Tennessee and across our nation. And we need to be in a sustained and continuous fight of resistance for as long as it takes to protect our collective rights and the future of our society. And this is hard work. It is very easy to become exhausted and even paralyzed by despair. However, please know, beloved, that together we are a symphony of voices, a rallying cry, a lyrical manifesto, a power source that will light the way to show that we are the majority and we are all in this together. While I might be a white, gay, genderqueer person with certain privileges because of my appearance, I'm not free. I am not free while any person in my queer family is unfree. The movement for our liberation is collective, and it must be intersectional, and it must be the most effective way to fight against the corruption that is plaguing our state and our country. Our silences to this day have not protected us, and your silence will not protect you. Patriarchy, misogyny, queerphobia, stigma from HIV and AIDS, transphobia, and downright hatred thrive on silence. It is our responsibility to shout our opposition from the rooftops to the rocky tops so that no one has the excuse to say, I didn't know. As author Zora Neale Hurston put it, if you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say that you enjoyed it. It is our responsibility as queer people and those who support the LGBTQIA+ community that injustice and hatred is exposed. It must be shamed and named publicly, and it needs to come from the voices that are not the same ones that you see leading the work every single day. Beloved, it is okay to be angry. I'm angry. The lives of our queer family are on the line. Our joy, our freedom, our rights, our safety, our healthcare, our ability to learn, our rights to gather, you name it. There are attempts each and every legislative session here in Tennessee and around the country to diminish our existence, push us back into the closet, or eradicate us. This is a time to unite, to organize, and to find strength in one another. We are collectively called to be a movement, and it is time for everyone who cares about equity to join forces to redeem the soul of Tennessee, and more importantly, this nation, to renounce the politics of rejection, division, and greed, and move up to a higher ground where every single body is valued for who they are and what they bring to our community. When I think about our vibrant community, the first thing that I acknowledge is that we have to fight every day for the right to be. As James Baldwin put it in his letter to Saul Stein in 1957, the place in which I'll fit will not exist until I'll make it. As we are called to be a movement for equity and justice, we are also called to be a community of care for all. And in doing so, that means building relationships that are defined by kindness, gratitude, praise, and a spirit of service, and an alignment to care for one another. As we are creating communities where all identities are pulling together, may the spirit of conflict and consternation evaporate so that no disagreement would shatter the ties of care for our beloved community. Moving forward requires us to work together in unison to create that beautiful symphony. Our self-expression and joy are acts of resistance. Sitting in this very room is an act of resistance, where we are honoring our queer identities in a state committed to dismantling our very freedoms. This is an act of resistance. And yet today, we should have radical hope that one day we can and will create a place where there are infinite possibilities for us all. The struggles for queer liberation, Black freedom, economic justice, prison and police abolition, disability justice, women's liberation, immigrant justice, binary destruction, body positivity, and countless others are overlaps and connections at the intersections of oppression. These struggles are the foundations of our freedom, for only in solidarity with the marginalized will we defeat the machines of power. The queer movement is only as strong as the movers it consists of and the directions it is moving in. We will only move forward when we show up for one another. In 2019, when we commissioned the Community Visioning Project with Nashville Pride, I did not realize how this research would change my life. Nor help me understand the newfound purpose for my livelihood and my mission. Over the course of 8 months with a team of researchers, we heard the stories of over 2,000 members of our Middle Tennessee community, whose lives have been forged in the crucibles of difference. We heard their desires for our LGBT community here, and we learned that not enough was being done for the most marginalized. When we delivered the findings of this research to the community in December of 2019, little did I know that my world would turn upside down 6 short weeks later, and our world would come to a near stop 3 months into the new year. The marketing agency that I started in 2008 with a $2,000 loan from my grandfather, with a used Mac desktop and a desk purchase at a going out of business sale, had been my identity. It grew into something that I had never imagined. Over 12 years, the agency that I had built and put my blood, sweat, and tears in expanded into a 20+ full-time employee agency with contractors, clearing nearly $3 million a year in business. I was able to buy and renovate a home, and I was living high on the hog and thought everything was fine. And within just a few short weeks into the year, everything that I built literally crumbled around me. A true story of Job for the theologians in the room. In a world obsessed with perfection, glamour, success, and wealth, we don't like to publicly share our challenges or our darkest and saddest times. Instead, many of us choose to bury those things, terrified of showing any signs of vulnerability, lest our existence or our pride be diminished. But the truth is, we all have stories of trauma, loss, resilience, and hope. And we all have the opportunity to begin again. Being inauthentic is one of the most significant barriers to achieving true liberation and becoming who we are truly meant to be. When our becoming is halted and we hide or suppress the pain of our lived experiences, it inhibits love from flowing through our whole being. Instead of giving energy to the pain of our experiences, precluding the ability to become reinvented and remarkable people. Glennon Doyle wrote in Untamed this passage that spoke so clearly to me through it when I thought about my previous decade plus of life. Letting old structures burn can feel uncomfortable and disorienting. Rumbling freedom is scary because at first it feels like chaos. Progress is just perpetually undoing our no longer true enough systems in order to create new ones that more closely fit people as they really are. Progress is the acknowledgement of what is and what has always been. Progress is always a returning. After a year of loss and a subsequent long road of healing from repeated trauma, I came to the realization that what happened to me happened for me. When we authentically share our lived experiences, we create a culture of freedom by showing others that things can and will get better. I am forever grateful to those people who showed me through words or actions that reinvention was possible. This is a process, it is a journey, and it is not for the faint of heart. Truth, liberation, and freedom often have been contaminated by those who think they know more than us. Those who tell us that we must live our lives according to their beliefs. Truth changes for each person, and it impacts how we show up in this world, how we make decisions, and how, most importantly, we treat other people. Our view of truth is the most critical interpretation of the world. With a path made clear, I only had one thing left: the stories and the data of the 2,000 plus people, LGBTQ plus people throughout Middle Tennessee that had shared their hopes and desires for a more inclusive and supportive Tennessee for LGBTQ plus people. It was at this time that I also leaned into the writings of Jimmy Baldwin, who said that as a writer or any kind of artist, our lives have a role to bear witness, to speak for people who cannot speak, and that as such, we are simply a conduit. I leaned into this idea and I wrote, and I studied, and I researched, and I used the community visioning project work, understanding that I was at the mercy of something that had nothing to do with my career and nothing to do with me. It was my responsibility to use the research that I had commissioned with Nashville Pride to force attention to the needs of our people. In 2021, a group of 15 community members came together to create Inclusion Tennessee with a mission to connect people, opportunities, and resources to enrich and enhance the multifaceted LGBTQIA+ community. While we are still a young organization, we continue to see that our continued research informs a need for a state that honors the lives of all LGBTQ+ people. As I end tonight, I want to encourage us to dream of a new future, a collective future, a future that does not throw out any elements of our past, nor do we dwell on the sins of those who have and continue to harm us. Instead, let us narrate a new beginning, a new South, where our aspirations are inclusive and reflect the brilliant diversity of the people that make up Tennessee, the South, and these United States. We are a mosaic of people that must be celebrated and honored. If we, and I mean all of us, are committed to a new South where an intersectional movement and revolution for justice, accountability, and freedom is prioritized, we must be willing to fight with every ounce of energy that we have to free every person from the categories that bind. We must implement policies that remedy generational injustices. We must demonstrate in our living and political arrangements that every single body is sacred. This requires an imaginative leap beyond the limits of our present lives, to work with every ounce of passion, every drop of love that we have to make our Tennessee, our South, a place that is welcoming for all. Will you join me? Thank you.